With some downtime, I thought that might as well track down people that are hard to get on the show and, maybe do a little extended time. The world's on lockdown, and it's really the only way I can get one Mr. Eddie Bravo to chat with me for more than 10 minutes before he's pulled into a different direction. And he joins me now. Eddie, how has quarantined life been treating you?
I'd rather be back at work, obviously, but the powers that be, pretty strong, pretty powerful.
Right.
Look at us. They locked down the world.
Yeah,
over
like that's
over
what
the flu.
that's
Over
what
the flu.
that's what's crazy about it. And like I understand the concerns here, and I don't necessarily want to make this like a debate show, but I think the way that we're handling things right now is interesting. I think we need to make a choice to a certain extent, because it's like right now a lot of people are worried about the economy, and like that's the truth. Like people aren't able to work, and they're on this shelter in place order here in California. But what is that law really? Do you know what I mean? Like I was joking that this is a lot closer to mixed martial arts law than martial law, because at the end of the day, we've told you what the rules are, and you can violate them all you want, and we're not even really going to give you a warning. Maybe we'll give you a warning, but not really. And while people are not obeying this shelter in place order, they're also not able to stimulate the economy because they can't go to the store and buy anything unless it's like a grocery store. Like this is how I know that I never left the house really before this. Yesterday, I drove to Best Buy because I wanted to look at something and then realized, what am I doing? There's a pandemic and Best Buy's closed.
Yeah. You know, we don't shut down the world for the flu, and every year it kills 50,000 to 80,000 in the U.S. alone, and we're not closing. Why don't we just close down the world every year during flu season? We need to all get together, the president, everybody get together, sit down, and figure out a number, a
Right.
lockdown number. Like, what is the number where we lock down for some projected? Most projections are like SARS, Zika, Ebola. All those projections were wrong. Global warming was wrong. Acid rain. We're supposed to be underwater by 2000. All these projections and graphs, they're garbage. None of them. They're always wrong. So whether there are honest mistakes or there's some kind of political agenda behind it, we need a concrete number. Like,
Right.
At what point do we lock down the world? When you look at flu numbers, just your average flu, again, 50 to 80,000 or something like that a year die from the flu. So the number has to be way more than that, because if the number is 80,000, then we should shut down every year. We just close everything down. So it can't be 80,000.
Well,
it can't be 80,000. I mean, we're talking about just common sense logic. It can't be 80,000. Maybe it's 150,000. Maybe it's 100,000. Whatever that number is, it's got to be more than the flu, because we can't afford to shut down the economy every time flu season. The number really should be like 200,000 or whatever. I don't know, but let's just say 100,000.
Right. Well,
we're not there yet in the United States. We're at like 3,000 or 4,000.
Right.
And we shut down everything, and we're destroying everyone's businesses. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because if it's worth it for 4,000, 5,000 people to destroy everyone's livelihood, if it's worth it, then we should do it every year. All right. Let's be consistent about it. Every time flu season hits, let's just ruin everybody's lives. Let's just do that.
Well,
we're talking about logic here, right?
Well, I think this is the issue. The issue is there's no vaccine for COVID-19. The infection ratio is significantly higher than typical influenza. I heard a stat the other day on, I think it was the news, or maybe I read it somewhere, but if you get the flu, if you actually have influenza, which a lot of people don't actually get the flu, they get some other virus and they think it's the flu, and they call it the flu, but it's not. But if you do get influenza, you are likely on average to give your illness to one person. COVID-19 on average you're likely to give it to no less than 3. Over a 30-day period, with those numbers, one infection of COVID-19 is supposed to potentially, on average, infect 5,900 people. And that's why it's on lockdown, because it's viral. It's I mean, we use that word a lot when it comes to, like, social media and things like that. But like when something is a viral issue like this, 5,900 people in this country, a good amount of those people are going to die. That's just from one person being infected.
We're talking about, but we're talking about numbers,
right?
Numbers,
right?
Math
right.
Is math considered part of science?
Yeah. I mean, science is
Right.
based on math. Yeah.
Numbers, science.
Yeah.
What are the total deaths of corona flu?
I think
so
it's like
far in the
180. Oh, in the United States, it went over
Yeah.
the 3,000 mark a few days ago, which was surprising
Okay.
to me, because that was that number was significant, because the last time life was like this at all was 9/11, and we've already surpassed deaths. More deaths have occurred in this country from coronavirus than terrorist attacks.
Do you know how many people have died of the flu so far
Sure.
this year, since January 1st?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like on average, isn't it like 61,000 people?
What's your guess?
Since
What's your guess?
I don't know, 15,000, 20,000.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I mean,
why don't we shut down for that? Why
because
don't
there's a vaccine.
Matter?
There's a vaccine. It's much more controllable.
But
yeah, I mean, I get a flu shot sometimes,
but
not every year, but sometimes.
But we're talking about numbers. We're talking about numbers now.
Right.
Like the numbers. Like numbers are so far we're 20, 30,000 for the flu this year. Do you think you think corona is going to catch up to the flu by the end of the year? Because by the end of the year, the flu might hit 80,000. You think a corona will hit 80,000
in this country or worldwide?
We're talking about numbers here.
Right. Numbers in this country, or yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it really matters.
We're at 3,000, right? We're at 3,000.
Right. So
if I had $3,000 in one hand,
mm-hmm.
and $25,000 in the other hand, would it matter which hand you picked?
Sure. Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, if I'm going to pick a hand, I want the most money. No? Do I not want to grab the most money?
What I'm saying is flu lives matter. Hashtag flu lives matter. We don't care about the flu. And it doesn't matter about vaccine this, vaccine that. It's still going to be 80,000 are going to die of the flu. And corona is a version of the flu that have the same symptoms.
Right.
But the same average. I mean, the average, do you know the average age of death for corona?
No.
Is basically the same as the flu? 80.
Yeah, but I mean, like I guess my question is this: if you look at the coronavirus numbers right now worldwide and compare that to the flu numbers now worldwide, I assume there's a large disparity there. I mean, 180,000 people have died worldwide from the coronavirus. It's a lot of people.
And how many do you think have died of the flu?
I have no idea.
Less or more?
I have no idea. I would say less, maybe.
It's
more.
Way more.
I don't know. But again, like the CDC and the World Health Organization, they believe that COVID-19 is not manageable like the flu is. The infectious rate is significantly high. It's 3 times higher. You need to manage that. You need to take proper precautions. That's what we're doing. My issue with it is this: if we're going to go on lockdown, let's go on lockdown. Let's do it like India. India's on a 3-week lockdown. You're not going anywhere. And if you do, you're fined or beaten. Here, people are going to the beach. Like the other day, I was at the grocery store. There's just high school kids hanging out in the grocery store. They got nothing else to do. So if we're going to be in the shelter in place, like let's make it to where you have to respect that. Because right now we don't. And all that is doing is, I mean, maybe slowing the illness, but at the same time, it's not stopping it outright, while it is pretty much destroying local economy.
How many people do you know that have died from corona personally?
Personally, none. One person removed. Yeah. Yeah.
No. So you know someone who died of corona?
So it's my uncle's friend's father. I met this person. I know who they are. Passed away 2 days ago.
How old is he?
Old. I don't know how old, but I definitely over 70, 75.
So you think it's totally worth to crush our economy and crush everyone's livelihood for something that's very not even it's not even it killed as many people as the flu. They're projecting like, but I mean, right
Right.
now
I
the
mean,
numbers are at the pace it's going. If I don't think it's going to catch the flu,
so
and even if it does catch the flu, if it does, let's say it catches the flu
right.
in the United States and beats it by 10,000. Let's
Hmm.
go by the end of the year, it's 90,000. It passed the flu.
But we don't
Flu is
understand it
80,000.
yet, Eddie.
Is it still worth it? Is it still average age 80? Average age. It's just like the flu, same symptoms,
Sure.
average age 80, same numbers,
Okay.
less actually
Then
so far.
why
So
is it
is it
happening?
worth to destroy? Is it worth it? So why don't we just destroy it for the flu?
So
Why don't we
why is it
just
happening
destroy the
then?
economy every year for the flu?
Like
Oh,
we
because
don't
there's
do
a
that.
vaccine, but still people die.
Okay.
It's still, we're talking about deaths. We're
Right.
talking about deaths. We're not talking about a vaccine.
Right.
We're talking about the deaths.
Hmm.
How many deaths? The flu is completely ignored in this. Like,
Right.
why don't flu, like if you die of the flu and not corona, like it doesn't matter as much. More people are dying of the flu.
Well, the issue is the health organization is saying that there's something that we don't understand, and they're trying to figure that out and trying to manage it. So my question to you is then, like you keep bringing up the flu, then why are they making a big deal out of this?
Because you know, destroying the economy every year, every flu season would just leave us like in Mad Max times. You know what I mean? And it's not worth it. People are dying all the time. People are dying all over the place. So we need a number.
Hmm.
We need a number, a solid number of deaths before we lock the world down.
Right.
Give us a number,
Right.
100,000. You're going to lock the world down with
But
numbers less than the flu, and it's same symptoms, same average age death. Average age is 80.
well,
That's just like it's very similar to the flu. It's just like the flu. Respiratory illness. It's just like SARS, just like Zika. What happened to all that? SARS, Zika,
right.
every 2 years. There's something new. And the world's going to die every 2 years. It's going to die every 2 years. All that stuff. Swine flu, Ebola, every year. At
Well,
what point? I mean, there's got to be a number where we is it worth it? I have people in my association that they're already gonna resort to like criminal life. We're already talking in groups going, what are we gonna do? You know, someone has a family and they don't have anything. You don't think they're gonna go out and steal? It's like, is it worth it? People are going to
so
start committing suicide.
the,
The crime's going to go up. There's going to be riots
right.
over something that's very similar to the flu.
Well,
The flu is kicking its ass. The flu is kicking its ass so far right now. It's like, I mean, it's ridiculous right now.
I mean, I think
Because right now
that's
we're at 3,000 in the U.S. I mean, Italy, what's Italy? Italy is like what? There
6.
was a report by Bloomberg just put out a report today that 99% of the people that died in Italy already had pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Bloomberg put that out.
Well, I
So
think it was
I don't know.
something.
Maybe they're lying.
I think it was something about the demographic in Italy. Like they had more older people, elderly people than anywhere else on the
Exactly.
planet. So,
Exactly.
and that's
Exactly.
playing out in the numbers here. I mean,
All yeah, okay.
well, my question is this, Eddie. Like, obviously,
80,000, 800,000, 800,000. We have to be consistent. There's just no consistency. 800,000 kids go missing every year. That's an FBI statistic. We're not stopping anything for that. Like that.
well, then
No one's even.
why freak out then? Like, I mean, it seems like you're alluding to something, but not outright saying it. Like, why do this for a virus that you say is no different than the flu? I mean, I guess maybe my question is this, Eddie. Like, do you feel like this virus and illness actually is something different than we've ever seen before, or is it just getting publicized in a way that it's never been publicized before?
I think the media is. When you look at the numbers, again. I keep going back to the science. Everyone's talking about science and numbers. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the numbers of death, not like cases. Like people they freak out over cases. Oh, there's 40 new cases in San Diego. There's 100 new cases in San Francisco. And guess what? Unless you're 80, you're probably not going to die. And it's just like the flu. It's just so when someone says, "Oh, 40 new cases in Florida," to me, I look at that as 40 new cases of the flu.
Right. So
Flu lives matter. Flu lives matter.
what do you think the end game is here then? Like what has to happen before we just go, all right, we're done trying to fight this thing. It's gotten out of hand, or it's going to go down, or, how do we win? How do we, I don't even know if winning is the right word. How do we just decide, look, there's nothing more we can do?
There's a doctor, an MIT scientist, expert in the immune system. His name is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. He invented email. Indian guy, 4 degrees at MIT. He thinks this is a deep. He thinks that he just put out on his Twitter and his Instagram today that this fear mongering over this strain of the flu is politically motivated by the deep state. That's what he said.
Do you believe that? I mean, is that
if you
something?
Follow politics and what's going on
Right
on Capitol Hill?
I mean, I try not to.
I could explain it to you, like why
Please
some
do.
people. Really, it's really, for me, it comes down to three different theories. There's 3 theories. There's the mainstream media is telling us the truth. There's the Q plan is in effect, and then the third one, the 5G conspiracy theory. The official story and the 5G one. If any of those are true, we're fucked. The way we live from this point on is going to be we're going to be living in a police state. Now the Q plan, if the Q plan is real, that's the only plan to actually save the world. Whether it's true or not, that's up to you to believe in. But that is a theory, and there is a Q plan, and the plan is out there, and it's been written. Whether it's legit or not, I don't know, but everybody should be hoping and praying that the Q plan is real, because it's the only plan to save the world. So
real quick,
it's a long story. It's a Game of Thrones type story. Game of Thrones.
Real quick, we have talked about this QAnon in the past a little bit, and I've looked into it. There's a great podcast out there called Things They Don't Want You to Know, which sort of explains how that whole thing started on 4chan and sort of evolved, and the coincidences that were there, and whether or not it was just a massively successful troll job. That's up for you to decide. But can you kind of give a Cliff's Notes version of what Q is? Because I think there's a lot of people that listen to me that maybe aren't really into looking into these theories like you have. They may not know exactly what you're talking about, but I'd love to give them that base information. You're much more qualified than I am to sort of explain that.
Well, again, there's for me, there's really just 3 possible theories. The mainstream media is telling us the truth, and that's real. And if that's real, we're fucked. Number 2, the Q plan. If that's real, then we will be triumphant, and it's going to be a glorious ending to all this. And number 3, the 5G conspiracy. You know what I mean? The 5G conspiracy, that's the scariest one of all. I hope that's not true. Man, I hope that 5G conspiracy theory is not true, because the theory about that is that 5G is really dangerous. It's super. It's I don't know.
Well, with 5G, you're talking about the telecommunication technology, like Verizon's 5G, giving you information and transferring information. It's like a cell. It's a radio frequency.
Yeah, and it's supposed to fuck your body up. So the conspiracy theory is, I hope this ain't true, but that's number 3 theory, that Wuhan was the first city where 5G actually got rolled out, because it says 5G on your iPhone now, but I just found out that 5G hasn't even been rolled out yet. It just says 5G on your phone, but that's not 5G. And I was wondering too, because every time 5G comes up on my phone, it sucks. I'm like, this is 5G. It's horrible. I can't even, everything's buffering, and I'm like, this is 5G. This is the shit everyone's talking about.
Right.
Turns out it's not even on yet. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's not even on yet. That makes sense, because they hyped it up like it's going to be insanely fast.
Right.
And it's shitty. But apparently, I don't know. Maybe it is on. I don't know. This is just stuff I'm hearing. I hope this 5G shit ain't real. But the conspiracy theory is that Wuhan was the first city that they rolled 5G out on, and it fucked a lot of people up. People just started dropping on the streets because of the 5G waves. However it works, I'm no scientist. I don't know. I hope this ain't true. And then they used old school flu virus. There's a bunch of strains of the flu virus. They got a bunch of different names, and corona has always been around. If you look at the back of a Lysol bottle or Lysol wipes, it gives you a list of all the viruses that it kills, and human coronavirus is in the back of a Lysol bottle. So it's nothing new. And then there's people out there saying, oh yeah, but there's a different strain, it mutated, and now it's going to cause all this destruction. Meanwhile, the average age is 80, pre-existing conditions. We're acting like zombies are walking out on the street, locking everything down. When it's, to me, I'm looking at it like these are just flu numbers. I'm just looking at the numbers, the number of deaths. I'm not looking at the projections and I'm saying, if it does this by this time, it's going to multiply and then boom, then there's going to be millions. They're always wrong when they project. They've never been right in their projections. So I don't really buy into that. I just go into the hard data, the numbers. How many people have died? What's the average age? The average age is 80, and we're destroying the economy for that. That's something doesn't make sense. So the 5G conspiracy theory is that 5G got rolled out in Wuhan. It fucked a lot of people up. So they used a coronavirus, a flu virus that's always been around. Like if you would have tested 20 years ago, a couple thousand people, there would be some cases. It's just one of the flu. People just say the flu, but there's specific strains of the flu. Every season there's a new strain. Right. That's why they can't keep up with it. There's all these strains. So anyways, the 5G conspiracy theory is that the 5G is killing people and not the flu, and they're just using the flu as cover. So when they eventually roll out 5G in the States, we're going to start dropping, and then they're going to still blame it on the coronavirus, and then they're going to have mandatory vaccines to stop this corona, when meanwhile it's 5G that's doing it all. I hope that's not true. I don't want that to be true. I'm looking for anything and everything that proves to me that that's not true. I don't want that to be true. I want the Q plan to be true. I don't know if it's true, but I want it to be true because it's the only plan to save the world. And according to the Q plan, everything's going to be better than ever and beautiful after all this is over. And and the mainstream narrative, that's no good either, because the mainstream narrative only leads to mandatory vaccines. Right. And that's scary. Especially they don't even have one yet. Right. And that's scary. That's scary. So I hope theory number 1 and theory number 3 are wrong. I hope theory number 2 is right. But I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just hoping for the best. I'm hoping that we come out of this better than ever. I'm hoping that we look back at this as a huge blessing in disguise that made us realize that how appreciate our lives and our families and our friends and our freedom and our liberties. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that we're going to come out of this better than ever, and the only way is if the Q plan is right. So whether you believe it or not, whether you've looked into it or not, everybody should be hoping that the Q plan is what's going on right here is. We'll see. The Q plan is very complex. It's very complex.
Right. So let me kind of pick your brain on this because, again, I've looked into the whole QAnon thing, over the last year or so. It's really interesting. If you like theories like this, there's a lot of layers to sort of break down. And, I'm not a big quote unquote conspiracy guy, but it is weird when you can formulate these sort of scenarios and there is a little bit of truth or plausibility to it because you can point to X, Y, and Z being undeniable facts. And, you sort of point to, well, is this related? Is this, what it appears to be? Is this, even deeper when you look into it? Can you give me a rundown of what, the Q is, the QAnon sort of thing? Because I think there are a lot of people that are like, what is he talking about? Who's Q? Who's putting together this plan? How are they making it known to the mainstream people?
Well, there you go to YouTube if you don't know what Q is and you're interested in finding out about this plan to save the world. Again, whether it's real or not, I don't know. I hope it is. I follow it every day. Every day there's a new episode on the Q phenomenon. Every day, the best person to follow on YouTube to decode the Q drops, because Q drops are coded. You go to X22 report on YouTube, X22 Report. He puts out 2 videos every day, one on the financial state of the world. He's a financial expert. And he also puts out another video on politics. It's the political one. Listen to the political one. The financial one, that's too complex for me. That bores me. But the political one, X22, the political, geopolitical report every day. He goes 30 minutes on the Q plan and how it's going so far. And some people call it hope porn. I'm all about hope, man. I want the best for everybody. I just want my life back. I want I want to be happy. All I care about is my family and my friends and my work and doing the right thing. I'm not trying to fuck anybody over. I just want to live a good life and be happy, and I want everyone else to be happy. And that's what most people want. Most people just want love and happiness and liberty and freedom. And that's what I'm hoping for. And that's what the Q plan is all about. If it's not real, then there is no other plan to save the world. And we are totally screwed and we're fucked. If theory 1, the mainstream media is correct, we're fucked. If theory 3, the 5G theory is correct, ooh, that's even worse. That's probably worse. That's the worst one. So the Q plan, follow X22 report. For those of you that don't know what Q it is at all, the best video to listen to, go to YouTube and find Q for Beginners. Q for Beginners by Praying Medic. Praying Medic is he's the one who put out that video, and he does Q decoding as well on YouTube. A bunch of people do. I mean, Truth and Art Media, Praying Medic. I'd listen to, Dan Bongino he doesn't really talk about Q, but he's basically saying the same things as Q. Q is a intelligence information dissemination project put out by they say it's a mystery who's making these drops, and Q could be a person, but it's the Q plan it's the good people in the government, the good people in intelligence, the good people in the military have been planning to drain the swamp, in the DC swamp, for decades. Once George Bush Sr. took over the executive branch, that's the CIA taking over the executive branch. And then, Bill Clinton came after that. And, Bill Clinton was, he was like right in there with the Iran-Contra scandal. You got to look into that, man, because Bill Clinton and George Sr., they're partners. The Democrat Republican thing is it's a distraction. They're like working together, even though Bill Clinton was a Democrat and George Bush Sr. was a Republican. George was Bill's boss, and he handed him the baton, and he became president for 8 years, and it became really super corrupt. They put all their people in the senior levels of all the intelligence agencies. So. And then George W. took over for 8 years. Then they even put more people in places where, if shit came down, they would have firewalls and blockades. So, the Clinton Foundation got investigated in the early 2000s, and they brought out the investigation, and then they basically said, there's not enough evidence. So then they just closed it and dismissed it. When you look at who was responsible for that, it was the same people that closed the investigation on the Hillary emails back in 2016. Same people. So they have their people. So what that tells me is there is good people in government, because there's a lot of people who don't trust anything about the government. Trump, Obama, they don't trust nobody. They think they think that everybody is evil in government, so you can't trust anybody. But I don't believe that. There's no way that could be true. There's got to be good people in government. There's got to be, because if there wasn't, there would be no reason to bribe anybody. There'd be no reason to blackmail. There'd be no reason to suicide people. You know what I mean? So when someone gets suicided for getting too close to criminals in government, that basically proves that they're afraid of going to jail, right? Because why suicide someone if if everybody is on the same team and they're all evil, no one's going to jail. So why even bother killing anybody? You know what I mean? So the fact that there is blackmail, suiciding, bribery, and all that stuff, and that proves that there's good people. There's good people. So what are these good people doing? Are they organizing to try to drain the swamp? The Q plan is saying yes, they have been. The good people in military and in intelligence, Congress, senators. There's good people out there. They're not all bad.
So when you make U.S. history and become elected president in November as the first candidate that wasn't on the ballot to get written in, what do you do? Like, if you're in the situation of being the world leader here, like, what's the right answer? What would you do moving forward to try to get past this?
Exactly what the Q plan is doing. I hope it's real, because the Q plan is they needed, the good people in politics needed a president that had gigantic balls. Ron Paul, in my opinion, is probably the most honest politician to me. Like, when I hear him talk, it just sounds like he is just speaking the truth. He was talking about killing the Fed. He's always talking shit on central banking and all that shit. So, but there's no way he would have been able to, if the Q plan is real. They needed a quarterback with poise, with experience, someone that has balls. They needed a lead singer for a band that could go on the road and have balls. You know what I mean? You don't want a nice, well-spoken, politically correct guy. That guy would get crushed. So, because the good guys knew that the bad guys had the media in their pockets. So the media is the most powerful thing out there. The media is like, can send anything and everybody into a frenzy about anything. So the Q plan, again, who knows if this is real or not? I don't know. But this is the Q plan. They needed someone that could not only take the shitstorm that the media would give them, and look what they gave Trump. They gave him Russia. They said it was a Russian agent. They gave him the worst shit. That's the worst shit. Russia. They gave him rape. They gave him racism. They gave him the worst shit. They tried to impeach him over nothing. They went after him. So they needed someone who not only could handle all that and the smear campaign and being framed, but they needed someone who would perform better with all that. Because like Trump's got like that, he's like vengeful, you know what I mean? And so the more the media attacks him, the more he wants to attack back. And by attacking back, that helps all of us, because everybody knows like the media's fake news. And now we have a president calling out the fake news every chance he can get. Man, I like that.
Let me just stop you right there for a brief moment, because I think that you are hitting something on the head here, that even if you're not a conspiracy theorist and people are thinking, what you're saying is just nonsense and they don't agree with it at all, those same people probably will admit, yeah, the news is like, news now in 2020, Eddie, is a genre of entertainment. It's not factual information, I think, on either side. Like, exactly. I mean, I'm not a huge conspiracy person and believes, everything that's thrown at the wall. But I will say I feel that same way about every story I see on national news and especially cable news. And I don't know how to fix that. I think there does need to be some sort of non-bias, separate from the government, ran by the people sort of watchdog party to really tell you, what outlets are going to give you real information. Because, you and I are sitting here talking about these numbers and the flu numbers and things that, we don't really have readily available to us. Just typing into Google and trying to find that information, I feel like I'm succumbing to a manipulated algorithm to not actually get the answers that I'm looking for. Like, why can't I find a quick, graph chart that shows me where we're at death-wise in 2020 from the flu to coronavirus? I'm sure it exists somewhere. It's not quickly attainable in the way that you think it would be. And I'm sorry, like I'm going through Google, which if you live in the state of California, there's some privacy laws that were put into place at the beginning of this year. You can go into Google, you can go into Facebook and in Twitter and request the information that they have on you, and they'll tell you like what demographics you fit in, what they can target you for as far as like ads and things like that. I think they're doing the same thing with just information, not people that are trying to sell you information per se, but all of these companies are able to manipulate the internet that we see. And when you think about that, that's a really scary sort of thing. Like you can't go online and just see the internet as it is. It's going to be edited and presented to you in a way that fits some sort of narrative.
Exactly. I was one of those guys who didn't believe anything on. I didn't follow politics at all. I was one of those guys that thought everyone's crooked. Fuck that. Because I was really into politicians, like specifically, and I got balls deep into them, like the Bushes. I got balls deep into the Bushes, the Clintons, all that. But I would never follow what was going on in D.C. I didn't know any congressmen. I didn't know any senators. It's like, that's all bullshit. So I never paid attention to the hearings. They got hearings going on all the time, important shit. And the mainstream media will only air like any, little clips that perpetuate their agenda. So it's all out of context shit, So I didn't pay attention to politics at all, but I was really, really into documentaries on the Clintons and the Bushes. I was like, and I realized, wow, they're on the same team. So I didn't trust anything. The Democrats and Republicans are on the same team. And growing up, I was always considered myself I wasn't political at all, but if I had to choose between Democrat and Republican, I would always choose. To me, Republicans were like, they don't let you have fun. They're all about family values, and they want you to be Christian. I just want to get drunk and have sex and play music, so growing up as a kid, as a teenager, you want to be Democrat. You want to be a liberal. You want to just have fun and fuck that family values, going to church shit, So I never really considered myself like a Republican or anything. And then once Trump started running for president, when he was running for the Republican nominee, I didn't pay attention. I didn't really, all I knew about Trump, I don't care about Trump. I'm Mexican. I don't care about no white billionaire. I don't give a shit. To me, he was the enemy. He's like, he's one of those crooks. I don't give a shit about Trump. I had no bias for Trump at all. I didn't even pay attention to him. The only thing I didn't never watch The Apprentice or anything like that. I didn't care about Trump. The only thing I knew about him really was he had that Atlantic City casino where he would hold Tyson fights. So I'd always see him with, Don King and Mike Tyson, Donald Trump. Oh, there's that white billionaire who owns Trump Taj Mahal, and he holds, Tyson fights and big prize fights. That's all I knew about him. And then once I remember like Joe telling me, Trump's running for president. I'm like, that dude, that boxing dude, the billionaire guy. I'm like, oh my God, this country really is going to shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, that dude. And then, then I'd hear again, he's doing great. He's smashing people in the primaries and all that or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, look what's happening to the country. That white billionaire is going to win. I didn't know. And then you start hearing, and because when you don't pay attention to the mainstream media, you think you're not paying attention to the mainstream media. You think you're not, but you are. You just don't know it, because everything you know, even though you don't watch the mainstream media, you're hearing from your friends, you're hearing from your family. And where did they get their information? CNN. So you just keep hearing this stuff. And even though you think you're not, you're immune to the mainstream media and mainstream information, you are not. If you're not specifically paying attention to what's going on in DC, they don't want you to pay attention. They don't want you, like the bad guys don't want you to pay attention to what's going on in these hearings. They're going on for hours and hours, and you could watch on C-SPAN and pay attention to who the good guys are and the bad guys. They don't want that. They want you to only get sound bites, out of context sound bites, to make whoever they want look bad, or for you not to pay attention at all. That's even better, because then you're really gonna believe the narrative, even though you don't think I don't ever watch CNN. I'm like, dude, how come everything you believe in is the exact same thing CNN is saying? it's not hard to figure out. So they want everybody not to pay attention. So, and I never did. So I fell right into it. So then he started getting bigger and bigger. Then it turns out he was the Republican nominee. And I'm like, oh my God, that dude against Hillary. And I already knew Hillary was not a good person. So, so I thought, wow, it's between Hillary and that white billionaire dude. Oh my God, we are fucked. So I knew at that point, I knew a lot about the Clintons. I knew a lot about them. So anyways, and I kept hearing, oh, you dude, Trump's a racist. I'm like, damn, really? He's a racist? Didn't he, wasn't he always hanging out with Don King and Mike Tyson? Oh, whatever. I didn't pay attention. I believed he was racist because people were saying he was racist. And then they would say, dude, the people started talking shit. Oh, dude, he's owned by Putin. Putin is paying him. He's a Russian. I'm like, oh shit. God damn it. Who's going to be president? A Russian racist or Hillary? Oh my God. I was like, I might have to move out of the country. And then after a while, I thought, man, everybody's really, the media is like, everyone's burying Donald Trump. I go, let me look into this Donald Trump guy. Let me go. And I right away, I'm like, okay, I wonder if all this shit is real. Let me see what's up. And then I immediately wanted to find out why people thought he was racist. I go, I got to find out this because Mexicans hate him. I'm Mexican. I should hate him. He probably said some racist shit about Mexicans. Let me see what's up. Because as far as building the wall, I never thought that was racist. Building the wall? Are you kidding? Countries have borders. You can't just have open border. Obama and Clinton are on video multiple times saying, yeah, you got to vet people. We got to do this right. We believe in immigration, but we can't just let criminals just walk through the border through Texas and Arizona. There's got to be some. So I never thought that was racist at all, building a border. How is that racist? Like, I mean, the people that are going to be protected from that wall more than anybody are Mexicans because it's Mexicans that live on the American side of that wall. It's all Mexicans. White people don't live there. So that wall's protecting them. You know what I mean? So I believe in immigration. I believe if you're having a hard time surviving in your country, yeah, just come to the United States, do it legally. It's all good. And if you could sneak through, hey, more power to you, man. Just do the right thing. Don't sneak through and cause crime. But if you're going to sneak through and just to get through the red tape quick, you know what I mean? And work. Like my grandfather snuck across the border. He didn't have to because my grandmother was a citizen. She was born in Santa Barbara. He just wanted to because he was a man and he wanted to get his green card and work on his own. And then later he brought my grandma over. She was a citizen, moved back to Mexico when she was 12, met my grandfather when she was 15, 16. They had a bunch of kids. He came over first, crossed over illegally, but he didn't commit any crimes. If you're going to cross illegally, just don't do any crimes. I mean, we don't want any criminals over here. So anyway.
Also, if you were born here, don't cause any crimes. Be a good person.
Yeah. If Trump building the wall, to me, I'm Mexican. I didn't see any racism in that. Everybody was saying that. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Obama. Anyways, they all wanted the wall, but they wanted the wall for the money, the funding, and they already passed the wall. There's a documentary called The Fence. Look that shit up. The Fence. It's about they already got funding to build the wall, but you know what they did? They never finished it because they stole all the money. They ran out of money. So there's a bunch of pieces of the fence, all along the border, a couple miles here, then a few more miles, nothing. And then watch that documentary. It's crazy. So when Trump wants to build it, he actually really wants to do it to stop the crime from coming through and vetting out the criminals. And, but anyways, so I'm like, okay, so what is it that he said that was so racist? What is it? So they said, oh, he said Mexicans are animals and criminals. I'm like, damn. He said Mexicans are animals. Okay, fuck that dude. So I looked at the clip, and it turns out that he said MS-13 are animals and criminals, and we're going to send them back. And then when CNN played it, CNN said, hey, look what Trump said about Mexicans. And all they played was, they're animals and they're criminals, and we're going to send them back. And then Mexicans lost their mind. Mexicans wanted to kill Trump. But when you understand the trickery that went on, that was out of context, that he wasn't talking about, come on, think about it. You think any politician in in the country would ever say anything like that and win anything. Can you imagine a politician actually saying that? A politician actually saying Mexicans are animals and criminals, and we're going to send them back. Can you imagine if anyone would any no, even if you felt that, you would never say that. That's committing political suicide. Who you think Donald Trump's dumb enough to say that? He was talking about the gang members, right? So once I found that out, I'm like, oh, damn. So CNN trying to smear him. I wonder why. So little by little, I started looking into it and started following it and really started listening to Donald Trump, his like entire speeches instead of shit that's out of context. Because you can make anybody look crazy. You can take me, you can make me look like a, I'm already crazy. But can you imagine if you took stuff strategically out of context? You could put 30 minutes together of me just saying the dumbest shit. And so listen to Donald Trump, listen to everything he's saying. I'm like, man, this guy's making a lot of sense. And he doesn't sound like he hates Mexicans to me just because he's building a wall. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And plus, they smeared him. They strategically smeared him. And then you look, and then I find out about Q and the Q plan and how he was recruited by the good people and intelligence and the military to drain the swamp and to bust out all these criminals in politics that have been scamming our money. And I was already down with that because I already knew the Clintons and the Bushes. And I'm like, this guy's going to go in there and clean all that shit that the Bushes and the Clintons. I'm like, okay, I hope that's true. I hope that's true. So I started following Q and I'm like, whoa, man, I hope to God this is the Q plan is a plan to save the world. And to save the United States, you got to save the whole world. That's why this is a global thing. And the things that are going on right now, coincidentally, while Corona pandemic is going on in Washington right now, the three biggest political scandals are they're under investigation right now as we speak. One is the Biden is being investigated for the scams he's been pulling in Ukraine, and he's running for president, and they're pushing for him. Biden. So Biden's being investigated with all that Ukraine stuff he's doing, and if he goes down, a lot of other politicians going down too, because he's not the only one that's doing it. He's not the only one. There's a lot of them. Are going down. So they need Biden to win. If Biden wins, nobody goes to jail. If Biden loses, if Trump wins, a lot of people go to jail. Okay, so that's going on. That's one of the three that's going on right now in Washington, D.C. You know, another one that's going down, the Hillary email scandal is going on right now too. The Hillary email scandal is going on right now. That's huge. They're reopening that. She said she's being ordered to depose. And she's trying to deny the deposition and all that shit right now. She's appealing it. That's going on right now. Biden and Hillary going on right now. And you know what else is going on right now? The FISA D class. That's going on right. That's the biggest one. The FISA D class.
What is this?
That's the mother of all investigations.
I don't know anything about this.
So those three are going to, the FISA is like, okay, because they went after Trump for a couple of years on, him being a Russian agent, right? He's like a Russian agent. So obviously all that fell apart. They had zero evidence. It was all bullshit. But you know what? How did it even start? How did he get accused of being a Russian agent? If that was, how? Like they said, they had a few of his aides under surveillance: George Papadopoulos, Paul Manafort, Carter Page. So they got surveillance warrants for them to spy on them because they said they had information that they had proof, they had evidence that they were Russian spies or they were working with the Russians. So that's how this whole Russian collusion started. So when you look at how they got the warrants and who was involved, big. These are the three biggest investigations in U.S. political history right now. This makes Watergate look like nothing. But coincidentally, all that's being buried by Corona. Something to think about.
Let's talk a little bit more about things that are right in front of us relating to you and mixed martial arts and maybe the fallout from coronavirus. First off, you have a network of gyms. 10 planets are everywhere. What has it been like, for you personally and also your affiliates all over the world? Asking you if they've been impacted is the stupidest question ever, but, have they been in contact with you? Have you talked to them? How are you doing personally, with your business?
I talk to them daily. We have a chat where all 100. I think I have 120 schools now, and we have a chat and we talk every day. And a lot of them are going to lose their ass. A lot of them ain't going to make it. Man, a lot of them ain't going to make it. They're like those little turtles that are born in the sand on the beach, and they got to make it past the crabs and the seagulls and all that shit. And even when they're in the water, them seagulls could dive like 10 feet. So that's what's tragic about this, is that we're destroying the economy over numbers that haven't even matched flu numbers. The deaths haven't matched flu deaths. They haven't. There's way more people dying of the flu, and it's a flu. It's a variation of the flu. Same symptoms, same average age of death. Old people with pre-existing conditions. So yes, people are dying. But people are dying all the time. Now, at what point do we shut everything down and ruin everybody's livelihood over what? How many deaths? Over what? Over the flu? How many deaths? 3,000 in the United States?
Right.
We shut everything down? I don't know. I think we need to figure out a number, a lockdown number. And and it can't be 80. It's got to be way more than 80,000, because that's flu numbers. So it can't be 80,000 when we lock people down. If the number is 50,000, we're shutting down every year and we're destroying everyone's livelihood every year.
Well, I mean, here's my thing. Like, if you're going to weather the storm per se, in an effort to really save our economy, we need to do something in the form of relief. There's a stimulus package out there. That's, great and all. We both live in Southern California. It is incredibly expensive to live here. You send me $1,000 or $2,000, like, I'm not trying to be ungrateful, but that literally does very little.
Nothing.
Yeah, very, very little. If you live in, another small market, like maybe that covers a month or two of rent. Like maybe that really does help. But if you're a small business owner and your clientele can't utilize your service, it makes it very difficult to charge them for that service, and it makes it even harder to retain them. And that's where I think that there's a real concern and worry for me. I mean, primarily, I make my money calling fights. There's no fights to be called. Podcasting, I'm able to sort of have business as usual, but at the same time, like, it's centered around fighting. Like, I haven't done a radio show in the last week that the main theme essentially wasn't what's going to happen to UFC 249. Will, Khabib and Tony Ferguson fight? And still, at the time that we record this, like, it's not looking good, but there's no real affirmation one way or another. And that obviously affects you. What has it been like? I mean, have you been managing Tony's emotions and helping him? Because this has got to be one of the more, this whole thing has been strange. Time and time again, bad things have happened to prevent this fight from taking place. But this one, I think, has got to be even more agonizing, because we're sitting in this purgatory in limbo without any real indication on what is going to happen, with not only this fight now, but even potentially for the rest of the year or for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? If it's worth it for 3,000 deaths so far to shut everything down, shut down the UFC, then let's just do it every year. Let's do it every year. It's the same thing. Flu, average age 80. We're at 3,000 right now. By the end of the year, it could get up to 50,000, 60,000, but we're still talking flu numbers. Do we shut down the world for flu numbers? These are flu numbers, not even flu numbers. So far, it's not flu numbers. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it catches up. But you know what? If it catches up, then it's just flu numbers. But it isn't even flu numbers right now. People dying of the flu all the time. 80,000 people a year in the U.S. die of the flu. People are dying all the time. So people are dying. People are dying all the time. At what point do we take the risk? Is it take the risk work? At what point? What point do we take the risk? Where do the numbers have to be? We need a solid number.
Right. There are a lot of people that are listening to this, watching this, going, if I can get, Tony versus Khabib, there's not a number big enough really to scare me. Let's go. Chael Sonnen put on Submission Underground in an empty grain silo. There are things that are being done to, have at least some, normalcy, although a grappling event in a grain silo is the craziest thing I think I've ever heard of as far as modern day venues. But do you think that, I mean, Dana White's been very vocal about trying to do everything in his power to put on these events. Like, do you feel UFC 249 will happen? And if you do, will Tony Ferguson be on that card?
I don't know, man. Your guess is as good as mine. The last I spoke with Tony, we were still unsure as to what was going to go on. I'm not sure.
And how can one really truly prepare, even if the fight takes place, business as usual, like tomorrow, let's just say it all goes away and miraculously life is back to the way a lot of people want it to be. Is this fight tarnished already? Like, think about what is going on. Like, at what point, like, I'm sure Tony hasn't stopped training and, doing what he does. The man is a madman, but at the same time, mentally, this has got to be the most draining sort of scenario I can think of for, two athletes that are headed into the biggest fights of their career.
Well, Khabib's not fighting. That's for sure. He's stuck in Russia. So it really just comes down to whether the UFC and Tony's management could agree on numbers.
Right.
It's really business. It's all business at this point. Business.
They've talked a lot about, potentially like Tyron Woodley. Woodley said that he would fight Tony Ferguson if Ferguson wanted to move up. What would you think about a fight with Ferguson and Woodley at 170?
I like Ferguson at 55.
Right.
The only fights I like with Tony at 70 are guys that have made 55 before. Then that's fine. But there's a reason why there's weight classes.
Right.
155 to 170. That's a huge jump.
100%.
That's a big jump.
I mean, Tyron Woodley's a guy that walks around at what, 190, 195, 200 pounds? Like,
yeah, he's calling out a dude in a weight division below him. I don't know.
But I mean, I don't have a problem with making a catch weight fight. I do to a certain extent when, you're someone like Tony Ferguson, who, if he loses to Tyron Woodley, it should have nothing to do with his status at 155. But we know in combat sports, it doesn't always work that way. I mean, I remember, going back in the day, Karo Parisian was guaranteed a title fight with Matt Hughes. He, tore his hamstring. When he came back, they're like, hey, we want you to fight Diego Sanchez, win that, and then you can get your title fight. Well, he lost that fight, and Caro's life kind of came off the rails after that. He never got back to that position. And there is a real risk. If anyone is dismissive of the idea that Tony Ferguson fighting Tyron Woodley, could have a negative effect on his career, I think they're delusional.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think now the Khabib's out, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if we just wait, he's out.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it's Gaethje. Maybe it's Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz. I think Tony has expressed interest in fighting Nate. Nate, he's made 55 a bunch, so fighting Nate at 70, that wouldn't be, as risky as fighting a guy who struggles to make 170. You know what I mean?
Right. I think people just want to see Tony fight, and there's going to be a documentary one day, I think, about these two, Tony and Khabib fighting, and I hope the fight happens before this documentary is made. But can you think of a more cursed fight? Like, I can't. Like, there's never been a fight that has been tried, attempted to be booked this many times and not come to fruition. And there have been fantasy fights that a lot of people have wanted where, they were prevented because of, promotional ties and things like that. Like, we all wanted, Randy versus Fedor. Obviously never happened and couldn't happen for a variety of reasons. But can you remember anything like this where time and time again, a fight was, attempted to be made and really it just never came to fruition for a variety of issues?
No, I think this is probably the record for attempts, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're at 5 now, so the next one would be 6. Like, more often than not, a fight can be tried and made like twice, and then it just, the landscape changes enough to where it doesn't happen. That's actually, I think, sort of a undervalued narrative about this fight between Tony and Khabib. It's the reason that it's been attempted to be made time and time again is because both of these guys have been flawless and have stayed on top and have taken really tough fights and done what they've needed to do to remain in that position. If, Khabib loses to Ally Quinta or Conor McGregor, or, he's not on the same level as Tony is that point. And the same thing for Tony. Tony's taken very difficult fights throughout this process. And it's the fact that we still want this fight time and time again, I think is a testament to both of these athletes' skills and abilities.
It'll happen eventually.
And Grain Silo?
I don't know, but it'll happen eventually. Hopefully at T-Mobile or Madison Square Garden or something big like that. This fight deserves that, Sugar Ray Leonard, Hagler type hoopla. It's huge. Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard. It deserves. We need to get past all this Corona,
right,
and move forward and get back to living our normal lives,
right,
and working and grinding. That's first and foremost. Trying to put together this fight in someone's garage, with a TV camera. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. You're talking about fighting for a world championship, the undisputed number one spot on the planet, at 155 pounds. You shouldn't have to sacrifice anything when you're in that situation. Like the idea that maybe you don't get a corner man, or you only get one corner man, or you can either have two cornermen and no cut men, or one cornerman and a cut man. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the scenario would need to be. But if this fight is going to happen, I think you're 100% right. Like, there shouldn't be any sacrifices made because we want to see the best Tony Ferguson against the best Khabib Nurmagomedov. And, again, even if Khabib could get into the country tomorrow, I think we've already asked a lot of these athletes to try to show up and be their best for 249. I don't think it's possible at this point.
Yeah. Really, I think we should just focus on getting through this whole Corona mess.
Right.
Get through this, take care of the old people. You know what I mean? Average age 80. Let's take care of the old people, and let's move on. Let's work.
Let's spin this a little bit positive moving forward. We ended 2019 with a pretty great fight week in Las Vegas, and I'm talking about the week that we saw Kamaru Usman fight Colby Covington. The night before that, or a couple days before that, we got to see Quintet Ultra. You were Matt side with me at the Red Rock in Las Vegas for a really exciting night of grappling and jiu-jitsu and that team format. I think some congratulations are in order to you, Eddie. I was going back through the vault of my stuff on SureDog, over the past few years, and there was an interview on there prior to EBI2, and you were talking about your format in the tournament and really what your end goal was to make jiu-jitsu a more palatable sport for casual audiences and prove that the sport could be shown on television. It's been quite a few years for submission grappling as a whole, and I think that it's really raised to prominence with fight fans, casual fight fans, which really are the ones that make the needle move. Were you able to sit back and enjoy? You're not this type of person to sort of like soak in adoration and demand it for yourself, but I feel like Quintet Ultra was an extension of really what you've accomplished with EBI and combat jiu-jitsu, in proving that, grappling, where the exposition of fighting on the television and on the stage is grappling. That's not something a few years ago that people, really were interested in, casuals, that is, let alone actually paying to see it. Like, I think you should be proud of yourself for what you've done in helping that, scene elevate to what it is. And that was a prime display of that back in December with Quintet Ultra.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's means a lot coming from you, man. I always thought you had a lot of talent in the broadcast booth. First time we've talked about this before, but for those of you that never heard the story, I sat in for a grappling match to commentate at Gracie Worlds or Gracie Nationals, and you were the guy that Rose hired, and I thought immediately, I'm like, man, I gotta hire this guy. You're awesome. I think you're the best play-by-play guy in and all of grappling. I really believe that. You're awesome. I love having you, and we make a great team. It was awesome. I don't like commentating. I really don't. I did the early King of the Cages. I commentated for a couple prides. I sucked. I wasn't really good at it, and I really don't like it. I'd rather enjoy the fights, whether it's grappling or MMA, with a beer and screaming and yelling and saying dumb stuff.
Right.
You know, but and I turn down commentary gigs now more than I accept. That's for sure.
Right.
And when the UFC Fight Pass asked me to do it, my initial response is like, how do I say no and not be a dick? You know? But then I thought, you know what? It's probably a good business move to just suck it up and just do it. You know what I mean? So that's how I approached it initially. It was like, I got to do this. It's a good political move. You know what I mean? I don't like commentating. I don't want to do it, but I just got to suck it up. And, you know, and I did it, and I had so much fun. I loved it. That was the funnest commentary gig I ever had. That Quintet Ultra, that was so much fun. I'm like, okay, I'll do this again. I like this now. So if they ever ask me to do another quintet, unless my guys are fighting,
right?
Like unless I have a team, but I'll definitely do the commentary again. I love it. You know what I mean? And and it's really all about trying to not only make jiu-jitsu entertaining enough to watch like a Saturday night or a Friday night, but how do you compete with MMA? Because jiu-jitsu is just a part of MMA.
Right.
MMA, there's so much more: elbows, knees, and there's so many different ways. Nothing's better than MMA. MMA is the best. We know this. UFC is the best. No form of wrestling or kickboxing or boxing or jiu-jitsu. Like when you pick apart MMA, when you pick apart the single disciplines, it can never compete against mashing them all together. Wrestling, striking, and jiu-jitsu. It just can't. But you can put together shows, grappling shows, in this case, where you can match the overall entertainment value per show if you do things like if you just had like MMA. There's a bunch. It's like 7 single fights, 8 single fights, 10. It's a bunch of single fights. There's no tournaments anymore. So in a single night, every now and then there's a show that will have a tournament, but basically the UFC doesn't have any tournaments, right? They have a bunch of single fights. So if you have a grappling event, you know, one that you're going to put on a Friday, Saturday night, and if you just have a bunch of single fights, there's no way you're going to compete with MMA. That the overall entertainment value is just not going to be there. It's just not. You know, MMA is better, but you can do things in grappling that you can't do in the UFC, like a 16-man tournament,
right?
Just like UFC 2. UFC 2, the reason why that one just crushed the world, nobody knew any of those guys. Those guys were named, no one knew who Hoist was. Mm-hmm. No one knew any of those guys. But it was that show had more impact than any other MMA show in the history, any other martial arts show in the history of the world. UFC 2 crushed everybody because it was a 16-man tournament. If it would have been a bunch of single matches, it wouldn't have nearly the same amount of impact. So it's the 16-man tournament. You get to see it unfold. The first round, you're kind of quiet. You're like, okay, that guy and this guy. Okay, all right. You're kind of just watching. Second round, you're like, oh shit, okay, these two dudes are gonna fight. Nice. And then the third round, the semifinals, like, oh man, this is getting crazy. And then the finals are always crazy because you know those two finalists. It's like like their career. You know all about them. You saw their last 3 fights. That's huge.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's how we could compete against MMA as grapplers. Is you gotta. It's same thing with quintet. You can't do quintet MMA. So that's where we can at least match the entertainment output.
Yeah.
And Little Bird told me the grappling shows on Fight Pass are the highest ratings. So that's what I heard. I'm not surprised.
I mean, there's something to be said about the tournament format that you're just not going to get anywhere else in terms of a 16-man tournament. And I'm sorry, like even if you're not a huge fight fan, if you sit down and watch a 16-man tournament over the course of a few hours, if you walk away not feeling endeared to those athletes, well, then it's just not for you. Like, I don't know why you were watching to begin with, but if you have any sort of interest in combat sports, I challenge you to watch that and walk away. And I'm sure there's going to be, instances where maybe the tournament doesn't deliver. It's a tournament. Anything can happen. But more often than not, I think you walk away from it going, that was a good time. And
Yeah.
I love it. And I think that it's been on display time and time again. During this quarantine, I hope people will go back and, check out some of the great EBIs and, Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, the quintet we were talking about. I did an interview with someone. It's very rare that someone interviews me, but someone interviewed me and asked me what my favorite fight to call was. And I've had this answer now for a couple of years. My favorite singular fight that I've ever called, you can argue, wasn't a fight at all. And it was the finale of EBI 10 when Eddie Cummings and Gio Martinez squared off in Mexico City. That was one of the loudest venues I've ever been in for a single fight, and they weren't even allowed to hit each other. And that tells you the feeling that you can get from a well-executed show with a good narrative that is driven home round after round after round. And, while Gio got his hand raised that night, I think if you didn't know either of those two gentlemen, you're walking away and not only a fan of Gio Martinez, but Eddie Cummings as well.
Yeah, that was for sure my favorite match too, and my favorite show. Obviously, Gio won, and the way he won, and I mean, it was, he got put in leg locks, he defended the leg locks, got his back taken, he survived, and then in overtime, he got Eddie in a arm bar, and then when it was Cummings' turn, he escaped. I mean, I'd never been so proud of 10 Planet and Gio Martinez and what he did. And then when Boogie jumped on stage and they hugged each other and they're like crying, like, man, that was obviously,
I mean,
my favorite all-time EBI. EBI 10 was the greatest.
I'm not being hyperbolic. It was the loudest venue I was ever in for a fight that I was calling. And I was fortunate enough to call Roy Jones Jr.'s last boxing match. Like, let that sink in for a moment. Grappling had more enthusiasm in the arena than a Roy Jones Jr. farewell match. Now you can argue, Roy Jones said farewell a few times and, maybe not everyone was believing it. But again, the fact that that sort of energy was felt in a building for a combat sport where you're not allowed to knock someone unconscious, which is what a lot of people look for when they go to an event, says a lot about the sport, says a lot about the production, and says a lot about, I think, what combat sports fans need to pay attention to moving forward. Because like you said, there's a lot of interest in grappling. And if it's, outdrawing mixed martial arts on UFC Fight Pass, well, you just talked a lot about how, grappling can compete from an entertainment standpoint with, full MMA. Well, it's not a theory. It's happening. It's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a theory anymore. It's happening.
Yeah. That's awesome. Eddie, I appreciate the time. I hope this quarantine treats you well. Don't go too stir crazy. I mean, I know that, the fever is a part of coronavirus and COVID-19. Cabin fever is something that I think is felt by absolutely everyone right now. And I know you've got a little boy at home. Hopefully he's not going stir crazy as well.
Thank you very much, man. There's a MIT physicist. I may have mentioned him earlier. His name is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Follow him on Instagram. He's got some real interesting corona stuff. He's a virus expert. 4 degrees at MIT. Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Ayyadurai. Follow that physicist.
I was just trying to follow you spelling that. I'm going to have to go back and write it down because there's no way I'll remember that. That one's hard. Eddie, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Stay safe.